All right, thank you everyone for joining today. Great to have so many people interested in hearing a little more about Spot by NetApp and the combination with NetApp. To kick things off, we've popped up a short poll. So it'd be great, if those of you who are in the webinar currently online and have access to your computer, can go ahead and answer those quick poll questions. While we get that poll taken care of, we'll also just give you some brief background. So basically, if those of you who are connected via GoToWebinar will see that there are opportunities to do questions. And so we will be monitoring those questions during the course of this webinar. Definitely any questions that we see that we can get to during the webinar, we'll try to answer live, but we also have people standing by who will also try to answer questions offline as needed. And we definitely will make sure that we get those questions answered. We definitely want today to have a great conversation with, some two key leaders at Spot and at NetApp, who really are kind of like the forward thinkers, who really were a key part of realizing the possibilities of combining the capabilities and technology that were provided by Spot with the capabilities and technology that NetApp provides in the cloud. And so in just a second, I'll introduce the two, and we're going to have a great discussion with them. We decided that it was going to be much more interesting if we don't do slide presentations. We actually want to have a great informative discussion with them. And so that's why it's even more important to be able to hear what your questions are, if there's anything that you want to learn. But we'll also, of course, be talking a little bit about introducing like Spot and how Spot fits into NetApp's overall vision and how the Spot products and technology fit into that as well. There's also additional information that we're going to follow up with after this to make sure that you have the opportunity to learn more as well. And so at the end of the webinar, stay tuned. We'll let you know some places you can go to get some additional information that can help you to learn more about the capabilities that we're talking about here today. So with that, I think we have, a fair number of people already have completed the poll. So I think we'll take down the poll and then we'll transition, into the discussion. And so what I wanted to do is basically start by introducing, our two key speakers today that we'll be talking with. So, Alana, if you can bring down the poll, we'll switch over. Now, we were able to have Kevin here live on video with us today. Jonesy is also on the phone, but I'll let them introduce themselves in just a second. So Kevin and Jonesy are respectively, CTOs of the Spot by NetApp business unit and of the NetApp Cloud business unit. And so Kevin, if you want to just quickly kind of maybe give your background, what you do, what you focus on, how you came to Spot, that'd be great.
Thank you, John. So yes, Kevin McGrath, CTO of Spot, now Spot by NetApp, which is a great feeling to have. I come from a long line of software as a service. Started with application service providing more than 20 years ago, is what we called it before we were calling it SaaS all the time. And I started my journey with Spot when part of my job prior to this was to research and find startups, new companies, and new technologies that were exciting in the world. Built a really great relationship with Amiram very early on, and he convinced me to bring my software as a service, history over to Spot, where we do exactly that, right? All of our products are SaaS-based, and we look to drive efficiency as much as possible in all of the cloud providers. And we focus the way we do that is we focus mainly on compute. And that's why, and we'll get to it later, that's why the relationship here between Spot and NetApp is so great, because now we can combine these compute and storage stories together.
Great. Thanks, Kevin, for that introduction. Then, Jonesy, if you could also introduce yourself, that'd be great as well.
Yeah, hey guys, my name is Jonesy Stefansson. I'm the CTO for our cloud business at NetApp. And I joined NetApp when NetApp acquired my company called Green Cloud. And we started building the cloud volume services, the Azure NetApp House, and everything as a service. So we created the service delivery engine. And I've been with NetApp for close to 3 years now.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah. So maybe a good place to start is just to talk a little bit about kind of the context that led up to, where we are today, which is having just completed and closed that acquisition of Spot by NetApp. And maybe, Jonesy, it'd be interesting for you to provide your perspective, when did you first learn about Spot, and how did you learn about the technology, and what were some of the things that you started thinking about and looking into that made it interesting to you?
Yeah, so it's actually quite funny story, because we were actually in close to 2.5 years ago. We me and Anthony Lai, who is the GM and EVP of NetApp Cloud, and basically our boss. Very shortly after the acquisition of my company, GreenCloud, we were doing Google Next and introducing cloud volume services. And we decided to play a game where we would separately walk the entire showroom floor and pick out what we felt was the most interesting technology or the most interesting company. And by pure chance, we actually both came back and had the same company marked as number 1, 2, and 3, and it was all Spot. And we were like, we just started laughing, and we were like, okay, we obviously have to go and speak to these guys. So what really interests me is the optimization algorithm that they had perfected, and the fact of the matter with the new Ocean platform. I mean, GreenCloud, we were probably the first contributor, and we worked with Google on the Kubernetes, well, basically when it was still the Borg project and an in-house project for Google, and all the way up to until they open sourced it. So we've always been heavy into Kubernetes, and I loved the Ocean Kubernetes serverless overlay that Spot was introducing as well. And we were also working on containerizing ONTAP. We were the only storage offering that could actually dynamically change between performance tiers and optimize on the fly on the storage end. And we really wanted to take advantage of the Spot optimization algorithm and apply it to storage as well. So it started off as a partnership, and the more we worked with them, the more both sides actually saw what a synergy this would be and what this would actually mean. This would actually mean that we would become the first company or the only company in the world that could optimize both compute and storage, and then look into Kubernetes, which has actually introduced more waste than anything else, because people are deploying way too big worker nodes. So I just thought it was just, a match made in heaven. And yeah, so I'm super excited about the future potential of this platform.
Yeah, so Kevin, it'd be interesting to hear your perspective as well. When you first heard about there being interest in working more closely with NetApp, and kind of your thinking that led you to understand the value proposition for working together there.
Yeah, it's a similar story. I was involved, fairly early on, not at that conference maybe, but shortly after NetApp started talking to us and started being interested in the technology, and we instantly started thinking about, hey, what if we could add storage, right? So not only can we add some compute benefits to NetApp, but their offerings also looked very compelling to us. We have a lot of storage that we use in the cloud for our internal systems and just how we operate on day to day. So things like CVO and the ideas that NetApp had going on, we started collaborating really well. And actually, out in the Israeli office, the floors were literally in the same building, and it's only separated by floors. So discovered at a conference, and then working together between floors in the same building was a neat experience in and of itself. And as that relationship went on, we realized that both of us were very, very interested in each other's technologies, and that moving forward, that there was a really exciting play here to really drive efficiency at all levels of the stack in the cloud, right? Taking compute, matching compute with the most efficient storage that you can do, and then really optimizing that compute and that storage for containers, which is where a big part of the market is going. Those conversations just kept getting better and better and better over time, and then obviously up to the acquisition point. So yeah, it was kind of a long courtship, if you will, but it was all built on just having really, really great ideas one after the other.
Yeah. So that begs up a great transition, which is talking a little bit about the Spot technology. And maybe we should step back for 1 second, because I know a lot of the people who are on the call today probably have only had a brief introduction to the Spot technology. Maybe Kevin, if you could kind of just level set everyone with a kind of a summary of what the Spot technology is, and just the quick summary of like the product lines that Spot offers that technology through, and then we can start diving into the specific topics like containers and Kubernetes is definitely one I want to spend some time digging into in more detail.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot there to unpack, but I'll start with the technology itself and what we want to do. So okay, we have a slide, so that's even better. So taking a look at the slide, actually a better way to do it is probably just talking through each one of the names that you see here. Cloud Analyzer at the top, complete visibility into your cloud. What we do is we can hook up any cloud account that you have. We can start analyzing that account, and then we give you all of the details around where you're lacking efficiency, where you need to improve the most. But we don't stop at recommending. Cloud Analyzer is really a gateway to automating your efficiency in the cloud. And you can come in with Cloud Analyzer and understand your entire cloud portfolio. And then you actually have action buttons. Those action buttons are the products that you see below Cloud Analyzer. So we have Elastigroup, which is on the bottom left here. Elastigroup is the first product of the company. And this is the core technology that really drives the management of excess capacity, or spot instances, as they're called in AWS, or preemptible VMs in Google. The platform ensures that your applications will remain highly available on top of this excess capacity, which the cloud provider can actually pull back at any given time. The cloud provider provides these instances at pennies on the dollar, like 10 cents on the dollar, you can buy a spot instance, but they'll take it back. So while you can generate great savings, you need to have a platform that's going to keep the application highly available on top of these instances that could get reclaimed at any point in time. So what we've built as a platform is a way to understand the entire market, to pull in the metadata that we see from across our entire customer base and what we see inside the different clouds. And then we have a modeling that will replace instances before they get reclaimed by a provider. So we're constantly keeping you at capacity, so you don't even have to worry about the instances coming and going underneath the platform. You worry about running your application, and this is kind of core to what the company was very, very early on. And that leads directly into Ocean. Ocean, we want to provide the same thing, but with containers. We don't want you to have to think about the infrastructure and the compute and all the different things to bring the most efficient compute to your application. What's changed between Elastigroup and Ocean is that your application used to be deployed directly on top of a VM, or was a chef recipe, or some heavier way to get your application onto an instance. With Ocean, what we want to do is let you focus on containers. You deploy pods to a Kubernetes or an ECS, whatever container scheduler you want to deploy to. We'll take care of the rest. We'll take care of all the scaling needs, whether the cluster needs to scale up, whether it needs to scale down. And then we'll also make decisions on, should it be a reserved instance? Should it be a spot instance? Should it be an on-demand instance? And then allow you to actually control how this application runs in the cloud without touching infrastructure at all. We'll take care of that, and we'll show and prove to you that we're running the most infrastructure, or the most efficient infrastructure for you. And so Elastigroup and Ocean have the same passion. They're trying to solve for the same thing, but Elastigroup's focused on VMs or instances, and Ocean is completely focused on giving you a serverless container experience. Lastly, on the right, you see Eco. And Eco is our fastest growing product at the moment within the Spot organization at NetApp. And that does full capacity reservation management on all of the clouds. So if you buy reserved instances, or you buy reserved capacity on Azure, Eco will completely manage that for you. It will understand when to buy more capacity, what capacity it should buy for you. And then in clouds like AWS, where there's a marketplace, it can actually buy and sell that capacity for you on a marketplace. So you're not tied into a 1-year or 3-year term on the capacity that you're reserving, for a 40 to 60% discount. This is great for applications that customers just don't feel like they would ever run on an excess capacity instance, very large databases which can't sustain interruptions. These are things that will continue to run on demand, but you can still save 40 to 60% on the cost. Eco will ensure that you're always right-sized for the right commitment to the cloud provider. And if you're engineering changes the instances that you're using, or you do a migration, Eco automatically discovers that and changes your commitments for you.
Okay, great. Yeah, appreciate that summary. So I'd like to dive into some of these in a little bit more detail. I definitely know like the individual products you mentioned, Kevin, are available still from Spot by NetApp, available for people to buy. We're going to continue to double down on the investment in them. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the places where there's some opportunities that are now possible because of the work that we're doing with NetApp. And so maybe, Yonsei and Kevin, if you could start by talking about like that auto scaling scenario with Elastigroup. Like, I know there's a lot of different things that you guys see as complementary aspects in the NetApp, the cloud portfolio as well. So Yonsei, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on like, what are some opportunities that, where you see these things coming together?
Yeah, I mean, both companies are really, bought into exposing everything with APIs. So we allow customers to actually, take control of their infrastructure and optimize it. For example, we have so many customer references, like the largest shoe manufacturer in the world is, I'm not allowed to say the name, but I'm allowed to say the largest shoe manufacturer in the world. They have, for example, know exactly the behavior of their application. They know when the peaks are coming, when it's low. So they are actually dynamically changing the performance tiers based on the APIs. And they've actually gone through a lot of work in programming against those APIs. Dynamically changing the performance tiers from paying 10 cents a gigabyte up to 35 cents a gigabyte. But they're only doing the 35 cents when it's actually peak. So 90% of the time they're actually utilizing the standard tier. 10% of the time when it's actually the burst is happening and the peak for that particular application, then they seamlessly burst into that. And they would love to have something. And I just went over Spot with them, and they loved being able to do this on compute as well. And here's where I see the merit. Even if you can achieve that today by buying, cloud volumes today and optimizing compute, whether it's via legacy VM-based workloads or modern containerized microservices, you can actually achieve that with Spot today and then buy. But what we are ultimately going to do is integrate the product so it's all, application aware and utilizing the Spot algorithm. So when you actually are able to, that traditionally is 90% of the cloud infrastructure cost of companies. So you can achieve this today by buying each product individually, but I just want to ensure you that the integration plan is full steam ahead, where we will offer that single pane of glass to achieve both.
Yeah, and one of the things you bring up there is actually a really important point, and that's this bigger picture of making infrastructure that's really responsive to applications. And so, we actually have talked a lot in the context of, why NetApp and Spot came together about this notion of application-driven infrastructure. And so, Kevin, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, what that kind of means to you and how you see that fitting into the capabilities and the roadmap and the work that your teams are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So application-driven infrastructure is wherever your application is, that's what we want you to focus on, right? We want our customers to focus on pushing applications, driving business value, and iterating as fast as they can on top of the applications they push to the cloud. We want to take care of the rest, whether that's compute infrastructure, whether that's storage, whether that's network. We want to make sure all those pieces are connected for you in the back end, and that we're running that for you, as efficiently as possible. So you're worried about deploying applications. At Ocean specifically, deploy the amount of pods, to deploy the amount of work, deploy the amount of things that you need to get done in your cluster, and Ocean will automatically figure out how to get all of those resources, so you don't have to sit there and dissect instance types and figure out, well, I'm going to use Spot for this and on demand for this and this family for this and that family for that. We want to constantly analyze how you are running your applications in the cloud, how our customers are running these applications in the cloud, and then meet that application where it is and provide the right infrastructure at the right time. And taking this a step further from compute, but adding the storage aspect into this as well, the story stays much of the same way. How often are you accessing your storage? What type of IOPS do you need? What is the application actually demanding out of this infrastructure that it's requesting? And then automatically right-size that infrastructure so the customer doesn't have to come in and continually fiddle with configuration settings and converting volume types from IO to EBS to standard to disk to SDD. We want to take all of that off the table for the customer and just allow them to run their application so we can make those decisions for them and allow them to do what they do best, which is their business.
Can I add a little bit to it?
Absolutely.
I think so. I'm a developer, and I've always been a developer, and I would have loved something that could actually be application aware. To me, this is taking infrastructure as a code to a whole new level, where we are introspecting the application need, and automatically always be right-sizing it. And it also gives you the opportunity to actually mark which, maybe specifically in Ocean, which do you want to have as you know, stateful or stateless replica sets. You can choose what you want to make sure that it's always highly available. You can also, for example, look into you know, a desired state. You know, those who are familiar with Kubernetes, reaching that desired state is months of work. It's a lot of work. I've been in Kubernetes a long time of my career, but the Ocean platform actually makes that easier for you to actually figure out where your desired state truly is. And that is application-aware infrastructure or application-driven, because the application is, there is a machine learning or deep learning algorithm that Spot has that actually learns and sees the behavior of the application and optimize it. It can optimize it not only for cost, it can also optimize it to always be running at peak performance. So there's so many different variables, different things, different problems that the Ocean platform is solving for Kubernetes. And it doesn't dictate you what Kubernetes flavor you want to run, because it can actually be an overlay on top of all of it. GKE, EKS, ECS, AKS, and hopefully soon OpenShift, VMware, whatever. It all needs optimization, whether it's on-premise or in the public cloud, even though, of course, we are starting in the cloud.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. So given that we're talking a lot about Ocean, maybe we should do a double click on that. And so Kevin, you know, you've already given kind of the introduction to some of the capabilities and how Ocean fits together, but I think it would help to do kind of the double click, because we've been talking a lot about, you know, the different ways you can get Kubernetes, you know, whether it's through services like EKS, AKS, and so on, or whether it's your own, or, you know, things like OpenShift. So maybe if we could do a double click into, you know, how Ocean works and how it connects into all these things, that would be great as well.
Absolutely. So John just brought up a slide which makes this a little easier to explain. So we have our serverless containers aspect, and again at Spot, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find out where you spend the most money in your Kubernetes cluster, attacking that part of the cluster and running that as efficiently as possible. So that part of the cluster that Ocean is interested in is the data plane. The control plane is where your master nodes run. That's the, you know, that's the mastermind behind how the pods are getting orchestrated, and that's the API you hook up to actually tell Kubernetes, hey, I want to deploy some work. Those are usually very small clusters, maybe anywhere between 3 and 7 nodes, depending on how big your overall Kubernetes cluster is at the end of the day. Sometimes it's completely hosted. In the case of GKE or EKS or ECS, you're not even going to see that scheduler. It's going to be run for you by the cloud provider. However, where you're spending most of the money in a Kubernetes cluster, the area where you can run anywhere between a handful and thousands of nodes in your cluster is the data plane. And this is where all the pods and tasks that you need to run in your system exist. This will be comprised of any number of virtual machines and any number of cores, ranging from the lowest numbers of 1s to 10s to thousands, and maybe even 10,000s of cores. On each of these VMs are where the pods get deployed to. And this is what the Ocean controller is watching. So the Ocean controller sits within the Kubernetes cluster in the data plane and is continually watching the scheduler. It's continually watching what the brain of Kubernetes is doing. And understanding what the brain is doing on that cluster allows it to make intelligent decisions about which infrastructure to bring to the cluster and which infrastructure to remove. So what Ocean is doing is it's watching which pods, which tasks, how much memory, how much CPU, do we need GPU, how big should the instances be, how many of the instances there should be, and whether it should go and get spot instances, reserved instances, on-demand instances. It's making all of these decisions for you so you don't have to. And then it's making sure that you never have an unscheduled pod in your Kubernetes cluster. That is the goal of the Ocean scheduler, is that your pods will always be able to be scheduled. And then as Kubernetes starts downscaling, if you remove pods from the system, Ocean knows the most efficient way to remove instances from the cluster based on replica set counts and priority of the pods that you've deployed.
Okay, great. Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to come to as well is certainly there are a lot of people who do still manage their own infrastructure, whether it comes to containers or Kubernetes both. And so I'd be interested in hearing kind of like, some additional thoughts, how should people think about that comparison? So Kevin and Yonsei both, how do you think that people should think about that comparison? Because there are certainly a lot of people who do try to manage that on their own today, or who do, rely on, some of the other systems out there. How do you think of this as being something that people should think of as different than, doing it themselves?
Yeah, first, I'll jump in first, and then I'll hand it right to you, Yonsei. You have to think, how well do you think you're doing this on your own today? How much time is it taking from you today? And are you on top of all the latest and greatest of what Kubernetes is having to offer, and are you adapting to all of those changes? So yes, you can manage your own Kubernetes cluster. A lot of people do it. It opens up all the APIs. There's no secrets in Kubernetes. You can go in and do whatever you need to. However, Kubernetes itself is a huge beast, and there's a lot of things that you need to think about. And Kubernetes doesn't handle infrastructure by default. So if you have Kubernetes and you want to deploy it to a cloud, you still have the infrastructure question. You still have to think, what am I going to use from the cloud provider to make my Kubernetes engine run? Take that off the table. You don't need to worry about all of that. You don't need to track spot instances. You don't need to track markets. You don't need to think about how you're going to buy and sell reserved capacity to make it work. Worry about configuring the application specific things that you need. Worry about the namespaces you're going to create. Worry about how you're going to carve up your Kubernetes cluster or your 100 Kubernetes clusters to the organization which you work in. Worry about these problems. Worry about the problems that are going to relate to the applications that you're delivering, and let Ocean take care of the harder infrastructure decisions, and control that cost for the cluster, which will become a full-time job for anybody or any team down the road.
Yeah,
and Yonsei, go ahead.
Yeah. I totally agree with everything that Kevin said, and it's no pun intended, spot on. So I actually think that globally, the way that Kubernetes is licensed today is based per worker node, and this is one of the things that is actually introducing that massive waste that Kubernetes actually, the waste effect Kubernetes is having. So this actually forces the customer to actually deploy this really, really large worker nodes, and therefore wasting a lot of them. You're wasting all the resources. They're just saying, well, according to the Kubernetes concept or the construct, I should be deploying a lot of small worker nodes, so I can actually have maximum utilization of per node. But that's actually totally different than the vast majority, and according to the CNCF, people are not doing that. People are deploying these massive large worker nodes. This is part of because people want to be able to make sure that they always have enough capacity. They're over provisioning, they're deploying way too large worker nodes. But by utilizing Ocean, it actually helps you right-size the environment at any given time. It can delete worker nodes and add worker nodes seamlessly. And that's what I feel like is, and it works on anything that you have. And people tend to sort of forget that even on premise, you still need to be able to take maximum utilization of your infrastructure, even though you've already bought it. It's not about just incremental OPEX or cost. It's also about getting the most out of your capital expenses. So this is a very unique value proposition that Ocean has, or at least I haven't seen anybody else do it this way. So you are actually, this actually allows you to run and operate Kubernetes like it was meant to, like the original Google Borg project was supposed to do, and has helped Google, manage all of their infrastructure, whether it's Gmail, YouTube, whatever. So this is finally, teaching the proper behavior for the Kubernetes admin. And even doing one more, going way beyond that, he no longer has to think about it. He can focus on the application. He can focus on stateful, stateless replica sets, the desired state of each one of its applications. The infrastructure is now taken care of for him and made in the most cost and performance optimized way as possible.
Okay. So another thing I'd be interested in on this topic of Kubernetes is certainly, everyone's on a different place in their journey with how they're using Kubernetes and what it's being used for overall. But I'm also curious in your thoughts, and maybe we'll start with Kevin, but thoughts on what are some of the workloads that we're seeing running in Kubernetes that are kind of what are going to be things that are going to be important for people to think about tomorrow? And how does, these technologies and the way that we're thinking about how they come together, how does that support where we see people going, into the future with Kubernetes and different types of workloads and usage of it? So Kevin, if you would have thoughts on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think what you've seen in Kubernetes is you saw Kubernetes take off with a lot of stateless. I think in the early days of Kubernetes, you saw that hyperscale applications, applications that needed to respond to a number of requests or CPU or some sort of metric like that to scale up and down very fast. And I think in the beginning you saw maybe storage was outside the cluster, or maybe it was a service that other pods consumed. But now, fast forward, and I think Kubernetes has become a landing place for just about any application, storage applications as much as hyperscale applications. People are running databases, people are running Cassandra, Kafka, Postgres, all of these things, metrics, all of it is being run within the Kubernetes cluster. It's becoming a landing plate for any application that you have. So now you have to think about not just how it's not just about scale applications. It's not just about the hyperscale. It's also about some of those more stateful services that you have in the background that these hyperscale pods are using. And you need to think about, hey, how do I tie in storage correctly in Kubernetes? How do I find the right compute with the right CPU combined with the right storage, and how do I deliver, holistically my entire platform on top of Kubernetes? And this is the direction that, many companies are pushing in. Is they're buying into Kubernetes and then they're kind of going all in, right? They're saying Kubernetes is our deployment platform. Let's use it. That's how we're going to deploy our applications, and it encompasses everything, soup to nuts.
Yeah, and Yonsi, on the NetApp side, you all have spent clearly a lot of time focusing on some of the different needs of Kubernetes and container deployments as well. And so I'm also interested in your thoughts on how this comes together and how we're aligning with what people are going to be doing more and more of in the future with Kubernetes.
Yeah, so like everything, we have this service delivery engine that we developed, and it runs 100% on Kubernetes, natively on all the hyperscalers, or all the public clouds. Let's be honest, stateful applications have always been like a second-rated citizen within Kubernetes. And that's one of the reasons why we started down the path of developing Astra. That is actually an application of where completely native containerized on top and pure storage, software-defined storage. And how that aligns with the Ocean platform is basically perfect, because then we can actually have multiple storage backends Doesn't even have to be an ONTAP storage stack, and you can basically go to Best Buy and buy a JPod, but you can actually get all the benefits of the ONTAP operating system and deploy that. You might not get all the performance, but that allows us to build those, different storage classes, whether it's platinum, gold, silver, bronze, but it ties all the data management capabilities into the Spot platform or into Ocean. And you can think about it, if you have your on-premise Kubernetes and you might be utilizing GKE, AKS, or EKS in any of the public clouds, it gives you that holistic view, but it also allows you to start replicating, migrating stateful applications to the public cloud. What Kubernetes, in my opinion, solved for was it made the application layer completely portable, because Kubernetes just won. Nobody's talking about Docker Swarm or any other containerized orchestration. Everybody's utilizing Kubernetes. That means that everybody has sort of joined the same standards. You no longer have this VM format issue going from OVA, formatted virtual machine, running on VMware in your on-premise data center, having to try to migrate that to AWS, Azure, or Google. I have to change the format from OVA to QCOW or OVA to Hyper-V. Kubernetes made all of that disappear, but it didn't solve anything for the stateful applications. That's where we come into play with like the new Astra offering that we announced a little over a month ago, and we have preview customers running on it. And that's where we see our Kubernetes story even becoming better together with the Ocean platform, being able to treat stateful applications like stateless, being able to seamlessly migrate, replicate, back it up to the public cloud, whatever you want to do, and just go into any namespace in Kubernetes saying, I want to move this full application stack now to GKE, AKS, or EKS. And it just seamlessly moves it, the full application stack or that entire namespace, whether it's stateful or stateless. So that's the sort of dream scenario that, or basically the very near future of the integration process between Ocean and NetApp, or Spot and NetApp.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Yeah. So we spent a great conversation here talking about the workloads and application side of things, but there's also a side of Spot that is focused on really what's more kind of the FinOps side and the cost management side. And so, Kevin, I wanted to maybe spend just a few minutes talking about some of the capabilities there. Particularly, there's this product called Eco that you mentioned earlier, and I wonder if you could maybe just give a little bit more information about that, and then also we'll talk about Cloud Analyzer and how that fits into that picture.
Sure. Yeah, I touched on Eco very early on, and as the slide says here, continuous reserve capacity management. And we'll keep to the AWS example for right now. If you buy reserved instances in AWS, what you tell the cloud provider is, I'm going to commit to paying you for this instance for an entire year, and in exchange for that, you're going to give me a 40 to 60% discount on the cost of that instance. Now, what happens if that changes? What if your needs change? What if you need to buy more? What if you need to get rid of some? Eco takes care of all of that for you. AWS has what's called a marketplace where you can buy and sell reserved capacity with other customers, and Eco will take care of doing all of these things for you, so you don't have to. So for all of your workloads that aren't running, on excess capacity or Spot instances, you can still save a significant amount of money in the cloud. And Eco will cover that compute for you. And it doesn't just work on instances, it works on DynamoDB, it works on CloudFront, it works for anything that you can buy reserved capacity for in the cloud. And it'll look at the trending of what you've done over time, predict out what you need in the future, and then continually analyze this every single day. And then it will make decisions on which reserve capacity you should sell to other customers and which reserve capacity you should buy more of. And what's really great is we have such a large customer base for Eco now that we can actually make these deals between customers of people who might need a certain instance type against people who might need to be getting rid of a certain instance type, and practically make that transaction for them before it even hits the marketplace. So Eco, almost guarantees a buyer and seller for the transaction. So you're not just throwing a reservation capacity out on the marketplace, hoping that someone will find it and buy it at a given time. The automation of Eco takes care of that for you. And what this means is you can take traditional applications that you've either brought from, on-prem to the cloud, or just big applications that have never really made it to a cloud native state, and still save a lot of money. And as you mature, as you go through digital transformation, as you make more cloud native applications, Eco will automatically right size your reservation capacity, while on the other side, Elastic Group and Ocean can help you optimize for the more cloud native applications that you're running.
Okay, great. Yeah. And then, I think that the other thing I wanted to talk about is there's this also capability and product around Cloud Analyzer that really kind of ties together a lot of the different aspects, including Eco. And so I wonder if maybe you could just, briefly talk about what that is and does and how that fits together with all these capabilities.
Yeah, Cloud Analyzer is your complete view to your entire cloud portfolio. You connect your cloud account, AWS, GCP, Azure, you connect it. We analyze every detail of the bill, and then show you everything about your cloud account, where you're spending, and how efficient that you're being at that spend. So with Cloud Analyzer, not only are we going to show you what's going on with your current bill, we're going to show you your trends. We're going to allow you to set up notifications. We're also going to automatically detect anomalies. And we're going to do this by looking at seasonality. We're going to take a look at your historical use of how you use the cloud. We're going to take a lot of features of how your cloud account runs, boil that into the model that looks at your account, and then decides, hey, this looks like it's out of scope. A service that you've never used has all of a sudden popped on the screen, or a service that you've been using for the past 6 months has now spiked in cost. And we want to alert you to these different things before you would normally log in and notice that anything was going on. Furthermore, to drive the efficiency point home even further, is we want to analyze every single service you're using in the cloud and then tell you how to use it more efficiently. And then not only tell you how to do it, but actually take the steps to do it for you. And this is where Elastic Group, Ocean, and Eco come into play again. Cloud Analyzer will show you, hey, if you turn on Elastic Group here, you can save 80% on your bill by using excess capacity. It'll detect a Kubernetes cluster that's not optimized and tell you, hey, if you turn on Ocean, you can save this much more by turning on Ocean and running your Kubernetes cluster with spot instances or with reserved instances. And with Eco, we'll take a look at all the capacity that's not covered by a cost savings plan and actually buy and sell the RIs to make sure that happens. We never want a customer to run with on-demand prices again. There's no reason to pay on demand. On the platform, we strive that everybody will be running reduced compute and keeping their applications highly available.
Yeah, so Yonsei, I'd be interested in having you summarize a little bit as well and talk about, NetApp certainly has a number of different capabilities, including around helping you to reduce costs in the cloud, but also around helping you to have visibility and an overall view of what you're doing in your cloud infrastructure and operating of that. So I'd be interested in your perspectives on the complementary natures and the ways that the capabilities that NetApp provides in this visibility and cost management realm also complement and fit together with what Spot provides. Not sure if Yonsei, are you there, or did we lose you temporarily?
No, sorry, I was muted. So I can actually speak from my own experience. I have a very large development team and development environment. And prior to Spot, of course, we are all using Spot now to optimize our own cloud infrastructure costs. But we've always been utilizing something, a product which we call Cloud Insight. It gives us, that a very similar but more storage-centric, very similar and complementary to Cloud Analyzer. So what we've always done is it's constantly looking at our Kubernetes cluster. It's constantly telling me how much I'm spending, how much I'm actually utilizing, both on the storage and the compute side, and then that creates an event. And every event that occurs, we have now programmed an automatic reaction to that event. This is prior to the Spot acquisition and the Spot partnership. But Cloud Insight is a really great product to actually tell me when I'm supposed to be switching to a different performance tier on storage, or deploy a different instance, or I'm being bottlenecked. It didn't have the same, the automatic reaction wasn't at the same level as the Spot algorithm for compute, but I was utilizing all the information that we got from Cloud Insight in changing both storage and instance types. I wasn't doing anything on the Spot market. I was basically just changing, my on-demand instances. So you can see how Spot and Ocean is taking that to a whole nother level. But they are also going to be able to, fetch all the information on the storage side from Cloud Insight.
Okay, great. Yeah. So we just have a few minutes left. As I mentioned before, if anyone has questions, by all means, enter them in the question window, and we'll be able to get those either during the live broadcast here or afterwards. But one thing I wanted to talk about here in the last few minutes that we have is we started talking a little bit about some of the ways that people actually are using the Spot and the NetApp products together. And it was kind of interesting. I've heard the story about how Spot was already a customer of NetApp, and NetApp has already been a customer of Spot. So, Jonsi talked a little bit about how NetApp was using the Spot capabilities, but Kevin, I'm also interested in hearing kind of the case study, so to speak, of how Spot was actually finding places where they were using the NetApp capabilities in complementary ways to the Spot capabilities in our own in our own environment.
Yeah, absolutely, and it will come as no surprise. I mean, they're all storage based. We run, internally, we run a fairly large Elasticsearch cluster. We also run any number of databases behind the scenes, and we brought on CVO to start taking care of those storage needs for us. So CVO is a much more efficient way to use storage, and especially for our Elasticsearch cluster, where it's important for the storage to be close. It's important for it to be on the instances. You end up spending a lot of costs in cloud native storage at that point in time. But with NetApp's technology, we're able to take something like an Elasticsearch cluster or a MySQL database and not only run it for less of cost, but we also get a lot of things out of the bag that just work a lot easier. Things like compression, things like dedupe, things like instant snapshotting to help us with our backup retention. And then not only getting that snapshotting, but getting that replication of those snapshots from one location to another location to make sure, not only our applications are highly available, but our data in the background is highly available. So getting all of this, quote unquote, out of the box feels very natural to us, because it's like what we're doing for compute. We're just providing out of the box what things everybody needs for compute. The NetApp products do exactly that for storage. And so combining that story for us on our end, where we use both our product and now NetApp's product also on the back end, we want to take that same experience and give it to everybody.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, so maybe then the last thing I'd like to get perspectives from both of you on is, for people out there, where would they start? We've talked about everything from, container workloads to scalable applications behind load balancers to cost management in general. But we'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on what are some of the most common places people get started? The types of workloads, the types of use cases, or things like that. So maybe Kevin, if you want to start with that question.
Just in general?
Yeah, just in general. If someone said this sounds interesting, it sounds like there's a lot of useful things that we could take advantage of, but where should we start, right? What would be your recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, if you're running any application at scale in the cloud today, you want to worry about running that application at scale and not about the infrastructure and all the costs and everything that's going around with it. Especially if you're a developer, if you're an engineer, if you're an application developer, these are the things you get hit over the head with every single day. It's it's great that you're making this application. Our cloud bill's going way up. You need to stop pushing. That's what you don't want to hear from your organization, is that all of a sudden you need to think about how you can't scale anymore because you're spending too much. So I would say first, from a Spot perspective, we ease the pain for customers, whether it's applications get deployed on VMs or applications that get deployed in Kubernetes. We allow people to scale more, spend less, be more efficient, have, cloud for less. That's what we want at the end of the day. We want to enable whatever application you're developing, whether it's in the ad tech business and you're getting a million requests per minute from all over the globe of coming in and hitting your cloud account, and you need to scale those, or at the edge in different regions across the world, or whether it's a web app, right? That's just serving web requests, but it's hundreds of thousands or millions of users, right? And you need to scale based on that. These are the applications that Spot kind of grew up on, but also now, especially with Spot by NetApp, bring in the databases, bring in the storage, bring in the whole suite of applications and put it together. I know it's kind of like a very high level generic answer, but really people are running everything in the cloud, and there's now no application that can't be covered by either Elastic Group, Ocean, Eco, and there's no storage solution that can't be covered by NetApp. So whatever you're deciding to run in the cloud is something that we can optimize, and something that we have use cases and customers behind, and something that we're already doing. So I know it's kind of a lame question without like a specific answer, but really our customers are running everything and anything.
Okay, great. Yeah, and Yonsei, just wanted to check and see if you had thoughts on like where people most commonly start.
So I would actually advise everybody to go down the same path as when I was learning and discovering Spot. What I did is I took one development team and all of their resources that they were using, and I just used the trial license from Spot and just tested it out. And you can really, really quickly see the cost savings that you will be able to achieve. And I mean, basically all of NetApp cloud consumption now is running via and through Spot on the compute, and we of course have optimized the storage that we want our joint customers to be able to reap the benefits from. So from my perspective, as a developer, as a product guy, I love to see the immediate impact that it has. And I know it's sometimes a hard decision to actually jump right in with your production systems, but you will just see it immediately when taking one of your development, testing, or even staging. Staging is the perfect environment to test it out, because you will see the impact it's actually going to have on your production. So that's the route I would take, and that's the route I advise everybody to take. Seeing is believing, way more than any marketing slide. I'm a like I said, I'm a developer, so I have to test everything myself. And I mean, from us testing it led to partnerships, and then it led to an acquisition. We were so blown away by the technology and the cost savings that we got immediately. And that all started with, one development environment.
Okay, great. Yeah. So we're getting to the end of the time that we have. So wanted to just start wrapping up. I did have one more question, but while we have that one more question, I think we have one more poll, so we can pull up that poll while we're actually finalizing. And the last question that I had was a question that did come in from the audience. And so Kevin, the question that came in was fundamentally the question of like, well, so what does this cost, right? And so they're looking for kind of a summary of, the way that Spot, has its commercial model. So I was wondering if you could maybe like just briefly give the quick summary of that.
Yeah, so Spot is based on how much we save. So it's a success-based pricing system based on how much you're running with us. We just take a percentage of what the difference between the on-demand price and the price that we're getting your compute for, and then commercially at a corporate level, we take a percentage of that savings. So you don't start using Spot and spend more money ever. right? Especially if you're bringing on-demand workload that you're now going to run on top of Spot instances, or you're now going to cover with Eco. You never spend more money by using Spot, because we're only taking a percentage of the savings that we provide you. If we don't provide you savings, you get to use the platform, and you get all the other benefits of the platform, all the scaling, all the health checks, all the bin packing, all the smartness of Ocean. You get all that for free if we're not saving you money. But if we're saving you money, we charge you out of the savings.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up. There are additional resources. It's actually been amazing, like how quickly we went through the hour. There are some additional resources for people, and we will be following up with people on those. A couple of the places where you can go if you're interested in more information. The Spot website is certainly like a great place to get started. On the Spot website, you can sign up to actually try out this functionality. There's basically a free trial that you can use to try out everything from Ocean to Elastic Group to Cloud Analyzer. And then there's actually also coming up a live online workshop where we're going to talk in more detail specifically for technical audiences about how to get started with Amazon EKS and Ocean. So those are all great things that you can leverage to take care of. So I wanted to definitely thank Yonsei and Kevin for spending your time. I wanted to thank everyone who joined us today. Certainly, if we didn't get to any questions like during the live broadcast, we'll make sure to follow up with you and get those questions answered as well. And if you ever have any questions for us, definitely can reach out to us online or reach out to us. You'll hear from us with the recording as well as this information. So thanks everyone for joining, and definitely appreciate the time of our two speakers. Thank you all.